Guys, Utah is killing it in the transfer portal right now, and Marcus Wimberley can be great for the Utah Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen and view of the day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get your podcasts as well as on YouTube. My name is J.T. Wistrcill, credentialed media member who covers Utah athletics. On today's show, we got a lot to talk about, but first, I want to tell you, thank you for making the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network. Also, want to tell you about today's sponsor, Rougit. Today's episode is brought to you by Rougit. If you've been thinking about taking the next step, now's the time. Head to rougit.com/lockedoncollege to get 15% off your order for a limited time. Rougit, ready. Feel present, feel confident, feel ready. On today's episode of Locked On Utes, we got to talk about the Utah men's basketball team's disappointing season so far, how we got here. Got to talk about what, for my money, might be the best introductory press conference I've ever seen. That's how good I think Morgan Scalley was. I know sometimes we all fall into hyperbole. I think it was really that good. I'm going to tell you why coming up shortly, but we have to start with Utah finally getting rolling on the transfer portal. They've taken hit after hit with departure. Smith Snowden, Teo Johnson, John Henry Daly, Dallas Vakalahi, a few other ones too. But finally, the Utah Utes were able to punch back against the negative side of the portal and sign some commits. The first 2026 Utah football transfer portal commit is Marcus Wimberley, the Oklahoma State safety. There are also two other transfer portal additions for this Utah team that we'll have to talk about in a moment too. But I love that this Utah team is focusing on the defensive side of the ball here early because, look, they lost a lot on defense. Lander Barton, gone. Leavani Dumuni, gone. Along the defensive line, Aliki Vaimahi, gone. John Henry Daly, more than likely gone. Logan Fano, he's gone. Smith Snowden, Teo Johnson in the transfer portal too. So just a lot that Utah lost on the defensive side of the ball. So I love that they're being aggressive early. We mentioned that Teo Johnson left, the outstanding Utah free safety, not the greatest tackler, but was outstanding and exceptional in coverage. So who is Utah bringing in to replace him? That would be Marcus Wimberley, the true freshman committed to Oklahoma, was a guy who was always interested in Utah, but chose Oklahoma at the time. He was rated as the nation's 218th overall prospect by On3, ranked as the number 19th safety by On3, and the number 1 and number 30 all by Rivals too. So this is a guy who is incredibly talented. We just didn't get to see the last season. He's 6'1", 185, and as we mentioned, did not get to play very often, but didn't play at all his freshman year, but is a very talented, rangy safety. And he played a lot of running back and wide receiver, but he projects as a safety with this Utah team. And I think more, as has been the case under Kyle Whittingham, right, even though now Morgan Scalley's taken over, he's going to have a chance to come in and compete and win for this job. Morgan Scalley is a guy who's going to learn from Kyle Whittingham, and Kyle Whittingham wanted the best guys to play, right? You will become us, not become you. That means the best guys will have an opportunity to win their job, go out there, compete, and make plays and make things happen. And Wimberley will have a chance to be that guy. It's a crowded safety competition. Utah gets Rabbit Evans, Jackson Benny, and Nate Ritchie all back. Only two of those guys will be on the field for the most part, right? What combination do they turn to? That's where I'm interested to see, but love that Utah added Wimberley, a very talented recruit. May not have seen time at Oklahoma, but let's also not forget that Sooners defense was one of the best in the country. And Wimberley, I do think, can grow into a really strong player. Even if he doesn't play right away this year, I think long-term, even if it's just the year after, right? Because Rabbit Evans and Nate Ritchie will for sure move on after next season. I think whether it's in 26 or 27, Wimberley will make an impact. But how about we talk about some guys that I think will for sure make an impact in the 2026 Utah football season. First one is Ethan Day, the former North Texas defensive end, had 53 tackles and 4.5 sacks this past season in the American Conference. We talked about at the top, Utah lost John Henry Daly and Logan Fano. They need a veteran pass rusher to come in and step up. Yeah, they have a Lance Holtzclaw. They have a Cash Dillon in there too, but they need veterans and they need more depth there, and they absolutely get that in Day. I think this is a guy who has a fantastic motor. He gets after it. He won at the G5 level, and I feel like he's ready at the P4 level. Is he going to be a starter? As we sit here right now, I'd probably say no, just with that 4.5 sacks. How does that translate to the P4 level? But I do think he's a veteran who can come in still and get after the quarterback on occasions and will be a strong run-stuffing presence for Utah. But right now, I think Holtzclaw and Cash Dillon are your starters at the DN spots, but this is an absolutely added and helpful depth piece for this spot, and if he works his way into shape and becomes a starter, that's fantastic. A reminder, these guys develop over the course of an offseason, too. How about Dallin Bentley's growth from his junior season to senior season? Guy who started at Snow College, and now I think has a chance to get drafted into the NFL. I believe he got a combine invite earlier this week. That's how good Bentley was for this Utah football team. If that's a Snow College guy coming from the JUCO ranks, why can't a G5 guy become one of the top defensive ends for this Utah football team? But of course, Utah not done along the defensive line. They also signed a defensive tackle, which I've been begging this team to do for 2 years now. Get a veteran defensive tackle. And finally, they listened to me. They grabbed Lucas Samuelson, the Wyoming defensive tackle. They got to see him up close and personal. 15 tackles, 1.5 sacks. In that game, Wyoming did a really good job slowing down the Utah rushing attack and just frustrating this Utah offense, right? They had to settle for field goals, missed field goals, but had to settle for him. And he was a huge part of the reason why. He is a beast of a defensive tackle, and he's a guy I'm excited that Utah is getting up there. 6'4", 306 pounds. This, to me, is the starter that Utah just landed. I think he will be the starting defensive tackle opposite Jonah Laia next season. See how the offseason goes. Carson Kafusi, some of the other freshmen could get in the mix there. But right now, I like Samuelson to be the opposite defensive tackle as an elite run stuffer who's going to do a great job taking on those double teams to free up the linebackers to make plays. Utah's run defense obviously fell off a cliff those last couple of games. They need to get better in the trenches, and I feel like they absolutely did with this addition. A guy who can come in there and is willing to do the dirty work in order to let others shine. Utah was getting blown off the ball far too much against Kansas and Kansas State down the stretch. That should end some in 25 with Samuelson's addition to Utah football. But Utah, of course, not done on the transfer portal trail. We mentioned yesterday, they had Braylon Conley in, the cornerback, who had 14 tackles, a pass deflected, and a forced fumble as a redshirt freshman on USC last season. So that'd be big if they could land him. They brought him in for a visit. They have San Jose State wide receiver Kyrie Scholes, who had 59 receptions, 768 yards, and 2 touchdowns, also in on a visit. And why does Utah have a chance at Scholes? Well, Utah's new offensive coordinator, Kevin McGivern, was his wide receiver and pass game coach when he was at San Jose State 2 years ago. So after what Scholes was able to do this year, now he's in the portal. If he wants this P4 opportunity, it could very well come with this Utah football team. And Utah is not done. They're having other guys up to visit. They are going to have the Pagan, the elite Utah State wide receiver who led the Aggies in receiving yards. He's coming on a visit later this week. It's now been reported. Utah also having an outstanding Montana State receiver up on a visit as well, too. So there's a lot of good things that this Utah football team is doing right now. How about we won't have time to talk about this because we talk about Morgan Scalley too, but they did hire their tight end coach too. So I believe that Utah's coaching staff is now complete, unless I'm missing a spot off the top of my head. But this is a Utah team that is putting the pieces in place to try and be once again one of the top teams in the Big 12 in 2026. And obviously, Utah doesn't just want to be one of the top teams in the Big 12. They want to be the team coming out of the Big 12 conference. Easier said than done with Texas Tech flashing on Times Square that they got Brendan Sorsby. So easier said than done, right? to beat those NIL resources, and we know BYU, what they bring to the table as well. There's a lot of other good teams in the Big 12. I believe Oklahoma State is spending as much, if not more, than anyone right now in the country, just like through this portal cycle, at least as we're here early today. So Big 12, always stiff competition, but for Utah, you had to start making some moves in the transfer portal. They're able to do it. I think at least 2 of these guys will see major snaps this season, if not all 3. And Utah is not even close to done on the portal, but love that they brought in some instant impact guys to the portal class already. These guys hoping to make an impact on Morgan Scalley's Utah football team. Morgan Scalley's introductory press conference was yesterday, and I thought he absolutely knocked it out of the park, and in some ways should silence anyone who was questioning if he was the right next man to lead Utah football. This episode of Locked On Utes is also brought to you by our great friends at FanDuel. It's that time of year. College football is underway. The college football playoff rolling on. We've got NFL playoffs. But you know what gets lost in the action sometimes are Friday nights and NBA basketball. Well, Fridays already feel different during basketball season, and FanDuel is making them even better. Every Friday night before the game tips off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame at limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. Friday from 6 to 7:30 Eastern have become appointment viewing with the NBA Happy Hour. Opening the FanDuel app during Happy Hour always brings something new, boosts, bonuses, and surprises. It's easy to check the weekly special before tip-off and make a move before the window closes. The timing is perfect right before the games, right before the weekend starts. FanDuel has your back. So before tip-off, check out the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Thank you again for making Locked On Utes your first listen and view of the day. And we appreciate all of you who are everydayers, but those of you who want to make the next step, join the Everydayer Club. You get access to an ad-free episode of this podcast and a Discord chat where you can interact with myself and other Locked On hosts. To learn more information on how to become an everydayer, click the episode description below wherever you're listening on YouTube or your podcast apps. My name is J.T. Wistrcill. Thank you again for tuning into our show today. We got to talk about Morgan Scalley. What an introductory press conference. I really am not trying to be hyperbolic when I say it. It's one of the best introductory press conferences I've ever seen. And yeah, it's coming from Utah, man. Like, I graduated from Utah. I love this school. I love this program. So I'm trying not to be biased, but I'm sure those of you who watched it can back me up. I mean, my gosh, just right away after it was President Randall, Mark Harlan, and Bill Riley. I spoke Bill Riley very briefly, obviously. Then Morgan Scalley got to step up there and said, hey, I appreciate that everyone said, what is this quote? I appreciate that everyone said I do a great job preparing because I did not prepare for this speech and I'm just going off the cuff. And man, we got a raw, real Morgan Scalley, and I loved every moment of it. And after listening to him speak, there was not a single doubt in my mind that he's the right man to lead this Utah football team. I already felt good about it going into the bowl game, winning the bowl game, but there's obviously a lot of like, hey, there's all this noise out there about Kyle Whittingham, right? Did he always step down? Was there other reasons? Did Utah just be like, no, we want to go another direction? There's a lot of noise out there right now. But just listening to Morgan Scalley talk, it just makes me go, this is the right guy. I don't care what happened in the past. This is the right guy to lead Utah football right here, right now. And I just loved his press conference. So what stood out about it to me, and why do I feel like Morgan Scalley just absolutely had one of the best press conferences for introduction I've ever seen? Well, he was just real. I mean, he started to tear up almost right away, but he said, hey, I'm a baby man, but our teams are going to rip your face off. And you know, he means that. We know what a tenacious coach he is. He is the coach that everyone loves to play for. He's going to get in your face and get on you when you make mistakes, but he's going to love you up when you make a big play. And I love that comment. Like and being willing to show emotion, right? There's always that joke that real men cry is a statement, right? But being willing to be vulnerable in front of a room of people like that does take a real amount of strength and vulnerability. Morgan Scalley clearly has that too. You know, he talked about his background as well, right? Talking about how I always wanted to play here because my dad played here. You know, he grew up going to games here. He said, I've been a Utah fan forever. I'm one of you guys. That's what he said. And that's what I love in his eyes. And just during that whole press conference, I could see how much all of this meant to him. It truly is a dream come true. A guy who grew up dreaming about being a Ute, and now didn't just get to be one, hasn't just gotten to coach at one, now runs the entire program. It's awesome. You could tell you're watching this man live out his dream. I love that. You know, just watching him thank his family and all the people who helped him get here. And we'll get to a couple of them. Like one of them, Rod McBride, who recruited him, and he called one of the best recruiter he's ever been around. Morgan's a guy who played at Highland High School and always wanted to go to the U. He said as soon as he was offered, right away, Morgan said, yeah. Ron even tried to be like, are you sure you want to do it? He's like, no, I want to do this. I just loved Morgan's enthusiasm the whole time, right? You can tell this is a guy who's going to do whatever it takes to put Utah football on top. And we'll get to some of the comments and questions that the media asked and were answered on another episode. But for the sake of this segment, I just wanted to talk about his introductory press conference, because his opening statement, as soon as the opening statement was over, I was won over. I was like, yes, this is the guy who's here and ready to lead Utah football into this next and new era of an ever-changing college football. You just tell he's been through it, the ups and downs of football too. You know, he had a great story on how he had to switch position from wide receiver to safety. He talked about he wanted to be a running back like his dad, but coaches tried to talk with him and just said, hey, you need to make this switch. And he also made the joke about how like it could be frustrating when when it comes in, you think you're going to be one thing and you have to make that change, but that's how it happens sometimes. He talked about Jackson Benny. He's like right there. Like Jackson knows what I'm talking about because he just had to do it this year. And Jackson actually did get to catch a few passes for Utah football this year too, right? But he's been a dynamic safety and is clearly a better safety than anyone else's Utah football team had at that spot. He's better safety than he was at a wide receiver. So it's a great switch for him. And Morgan, it was obviously a great switch from him to be a safety because he was a great one for this Utah football team. I love that Witt talked about the chance that Kyle Whittingham gave him and the love he has for Kyle. I know a lot of you are mad at Kyle right now, but as I've said before, I truly believe Kyle Whittingham owes Utah nothing. If you want to be mad at him for nabbing some of the staff on his way out or bringing some of them with him, I get that. But at the same time, he left a great foundation in place with Morgan and a lot of the defensive coaches. Yes, he took on the offensive side of the ball, but I'm okay with him doing that to have an opportunity at Michigan that he does, one of the top 5 jobs in the country, and he still left Morgan in a spot where he can succeed. Like, I feel like Witt has earned the opportunity at Michigan to have unlimited resources at his disposal because, like we said, we just call it what it is. Michigan has better resources than Utah. But I love that. Also, it's kind of funny. President Randall and Mark Harlan did not seem to want to say Michigan. So I did have to laugh when Morgan was finally willing to say, like, Michigan, and was also just glowing in his praise of Kyle and said, like, hey, he's going to do great there. He's such a great coach. And he just talked about he's grateful for the opportunities he had to learn from Kyle Whittingham and Urban too, right? Just all these guys who have helped mold and shape him as a coach too. Talked about his love for his players, how competitive he is, and all the transition he's had to deal with too from Mountain West, Big 12, Pac-12, recruiting, portal era, etc. Everything. This is a guy who's been through so much. How about a guy who's even been tackled by Aaron Rodgers? And he went and he said, like, hey, it's a grind just overall coaching, and he's learned so much throughout this journey. But I just love that story in the side bit that he was tackled by Aaron Rodgers, right? I thought that was hilarious to say. And great point too that Aaron's still playing. It shows you how long he's been around. And Morgan made a great point too about the ups and downs of coaching. He's talked about, hey, we went undefeated my first year as a coach, and he thought this was totally easy. And obviously he learned the hard way there too. It's kind of funny too that Utah's new safety coach Derek Odom at the time, he left, so that allowed Morgan Scalley to take the safety's job with Utah football. And had he not left, then who knows what Morgan Scalley would have been doing. Maybe he still would have gotten involved with Utah football, found his way back. But it's funny that because Derek Odom left, he got the safety's job, and now Morgan gets to bring him back as well too. So I love that. Another thing I found fascinating in this press conference was, that'll probably happen a couple times, honestly. Scalley being willing to say, hey, our goal here is to play in January. I have no issues with the coach coming out and saying that right away and setting that standard high. I think he needs time and more resources to meet that, but I love that his desire is to play in January. I believe that should be every program's goal. Now, if they don't meet that, that doesn't mean you should automatically fire them if you are Utah, because that's something we've never done in this program's history, right? But I do love that that's the goal, and he's willing to embrace and take on the challenge that his goal with Utah football is to take them to the mountaintop. And man, would I love to see them get there with a man who loves his program as much as we all do, Morgan Scalley at the helm. This is a guy who loves to coach and loves to teach, and that's clear as well. His passion for the game was so evident too. He makes it clear that it's going to take all of us, and when he says, like, it's going to take all of us, he's not just talking about the players. He's talking about the athletic department, and he's talking about NIL-wise too, from all of us, the fans as well too. And I totally get what he's saying, because he's right. If you want to be a team that competes in January, you need to have the resources to do so, or else it's not going to happen in today's era of college football. So I had no issue with him saying that right away. And obviously right before the press conference even started, he went up to two of Utah's most prominent donors. So Morgan Scalley's doing the NIL game very well so far early. And I love what he said he wants Utah to be. We're going to be a smash mouth team. We're going to score, and we're going to play great defense. The culture under Kyle Whittingham was smash mouth, play great defense, and scoring was always nice, but they didn't always do it at the highest level. Hopefully Utah can do that under the Morgan Scalley era, continue to not just play great defense, smash mouth, but keep up what they did last year and be a high-powered and scoring offense. His last thing he said in his introductory statement, he said, I can't wait to get started, and we'll pour everything into this program. And there are zero doubts in my mind after listening to him that is not the case. He is absolutely going to pour everything he has into trying to make Utah football a CFP contender year in and year out. Utah has obviously been a very good team now for several years. But if we look back to 2019, what happened? CFP contender. Next year, sure, it was COVID, but I don't know about you guys just watching that 2020 team. I don't think they were a CFP contender. 21-22, CFP contender. Would we have been so in 2023? Potentially. But we haven't seen this team do it 3 consecutive years. In fact, they only did it those 2 years in a row, the one time in the last couple. So I'd love it if Utah could get to the point where year in and year out, they are one of the top college football playoff contenders. It's going to take a lot, but I still think this team absolutely has a chance to do it. But I just loved listening to Morgan Scalley in this introductory press conference. Had me ready to run through a brick wall. If anyone has any doubts over Morgan Scalley's love passion, determination, grit, and ability to lead this Utah football team, I'd simply turn on that press conference and I'd say, is there anyone else you'd rather have running this team right now at this point? And I know Kyle just left, but it feels like this is the right man to lead Utah football into the new era. And I'm so excited to support Morgan Scalley. I can't wait to see what he's going to do with his Utah football team. Loved his introductory press conference. I love Morgan Scalley as the Utah football coach already. He already got his first win as head coach in the bowl game, and there's going to be a lot more for him. I can't wait till he gets his first one at Rice-Eccles Stadium too. I love the emotion that he's willing to display for how much he loves this team and loves this program. And Utah football is a program in a great spot right now. Utah men's basketball, not so much. What's going wrong for the running Utes? We got to talk about it. This episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our friends at Rouge It Ready. Let's talk about something most men don't bring up, but absolutely should. Stress from work, money, life. It doesn't just switch off at night. And when it shows up at the worst possible time, Rouge It Ready is designed to help you take back control. Rouge It Ready is a next generation prescription treatment created to support both the brain and the body so you can feel present, confident, and ready when the moment matters. Rouge It Ready combines 3 clinically proven ingredients in 1 mint that dissolves under your tongue so it absorbs fast. It's easy to understand why over 150,000 men have already made the switch. You can connect with board-certified doctors online and everything ships discreetly to your door. If you've been thinking about taking the next step, now's the time. Head to rougiet.com/lockedoncollege. That's RUGIET.com/lockedoncollege to get 15% off your order for a limited time. Rouge It Ready. Feel present, feel confident, feel ready with Rouge It today. It's been a fun show. We talked about football, adding transfer portal, the excitement around Morgan Scalley and how great he did in an introductory press conference. Granted, even if he did bad, it doesn't mean it was going to be bad for Utah in the future, right? I think about Liam Cohen, his iconic Duval that he said, right? And obviously Utah still, Jacksonville had a very good season this year. Nick Sirianni had a rough first press conference with the Eagles and that he would go on to win a Super Bowl with them. So even if it had gone badly, that doesn't mean, okay, this isn't going to work, but it just makes you feel that much better when he convinces everyone in the room that he's absolutely the right guy for the job and aces this audition in an area and setting. I'll also just throw out there too, Morgan Scalley is obviously much more comfortable, I got to believe, on the sideline than standing in front of the microphone with all his friends, family, and massive donors and bosses and everyone staring at him, judging every word he said. His ability to get up on that stage, be vulnerable, real, be honest, was incredible to watch and behold, and I absolutely loved it once again. But those were all great things for Utah. Morgan, transfer portal wins, love it. Utah men's basketball, I wish I could sugarcoat it. It's just not good right now. It's bad. They're 8-6 on the season. Their 8 wins have not come against any really good teams. Yeah, I don't think Ole Miss is very good. That's the only P4 team as well that Utah has beaten at this point in the season. They didn't get blown out. Excuse me. They lost to Washington 74-65. Then we get to the blowout, and granted, number 1 Arizona 97-78. But we had the running Hoops podcast host on our show not too long ago, and Andrew Crowley, who does a great job breaking things down on running hoops, and he talked about how, look, Utah, if you look at the right now, they're not favored in any game they have the rest of the way, and that's the kind of stat that makes your jaw hit the floor. But there's also like numbers. I saw something not too long ago that Utah, the Big 12 would be like the top statistical basketball conference. I believe it's according to Ken Palm, if you took out Utah, because they brought the rest of the conference down that badly. So it's been a rough go the first year of the Alex Jensen era. I'll also just say this, we got to be patient with Alex, with Wes Wilcox, with this group. Nothing, I shouldn't say that because Kurt Cignetti built something great in a day overnight, right? With what Indiana in 1 year, he turned everything around. For the most part, it takes time for coaches to instill their culture, get their people in, and build it into a winner. Whether it's football and how long it took Jim Harbaugh to get Michigan over the Ohio State and national championship hump, whether is we could also look over as well on basketball. Coach K, the most legendary college basketball coach of all time, he struggled his first few years at Duke and then took off from there. It takes time for teams and coaches to build a culture. We need to give Alex Jensen that. I still think he's absolutely the right man for the job. I think him and Wes Wilcox both learned valuable lessons about building a collegiate basketball roster this season, talent evaluation, all those things. They learned a lot. Let's also not forget Faye, their potential starting center, got a season-ending injury right before the year goes. And when you're already going to be a little short on depth as Utah is, as they tried to figure this out, that was a big loss for this team, clearly now. And Utah is going to continue to fight. They're going to continue to claw. But, yeah, they cleared the blown lead against Mississippi State, right? There's just been some rough moments for this team. Losing to Cal Poly should never happen. Needing overtime to beat Weber State as early in the season as they did. It's embarrassing and it's disappointing. Love what Terrence Brown and Don McHenry are able to do, but need more consistency from everyone else. Keanu Dawes has some really nice moments, 12-9 a game, but he also has some not so nice moments too. So Traore, another guy who kind of is in and out, disappears and makes a play, but then doesn't bring the consistency. And Utah needs to find a way to bring that consistency back, right? That's something this Utah team has to do. I do like that the Utah Utes added some size because they've been getting killed on the boards in some of these games. They added Colin McHaney, who is a 6'10", 280-pound big man from Georgia. He's going to join the team right now. I love this addition because Utah did need some more size with Faye getting hurt. They're undersized and they don't have, and when they do play that size, especially the biggest guys they got, hasn't been great so far. So I love that they're just trying to fix it. Is it going to be a fix? Probably not, but I love that they're trying to fix it in the short term. So it's going to be interesting to see how the rest of this year goes for the Runnin' Utes, but I'm more concerned long-term or more focused on the long-term with Alex Jensen. I think we have got to give him this year. If it hasn't gotten any better by year 2, then there can be some concern, but it's still way too early. We're not even halfway through his first season with the Runnin' Utes. So they're going to take on Colorado this evening at 9 p.m. Then they got a tough stretch coming up. I mean, BYU is the 9th-ranked team in the country. Texas Tech, who's the 14th-ranked team in the country. And BYU, just a few weeks after that, you still got Kansas, Houston, UCF, Iowa State. We already played Arizona, but you got BYU, I already mentioned, Houston, and Iowa State, by the way, all ranked inside the top 10. Some of them in the top 5. Ouch. Good luck Runnin' Utes. Sometimes before things get better, they get worse. Feels like that's the case right now with Utah men's basketball. But if you're, once again, if you just want to know, hey, what's going wrong with this team? It's the fact that they don't really have that elite size. It's the fact that they're still learning to play together. They really only have 2 consistent scoring options, I'd say. The spacing isn't always there. You have 2 smaller guards, so your defense is going to be hurt by that. So there's just a lot of issues, basically. There's a lot of things wrong with the basketball for the men's team going on, but hopefully they can get it right. And I do think they'll win some Big 12 games, obviously, even though I said that stat that they aren't favored in any of them. I think they'll win some. How many? That remains to be seen. But we'll be here when they do and excited to follow along and see how this men's basketball team is able to progress over the course of what is always a long college basketball season. We did talk about the women's team, though. They were able to get that top 10 upset over TCU, right? And now I'm excited to see how things are going to go and how they end up faring to the rest of the way for them. So we'll keep covering the Runnin' Utes on both the men's and women's side the rest of the way. But thank you guys for making Locked On Utes your first listen and view of the day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. If you're in the market for a second listen, check out Locked On College Football, Locked On Big 12, have you covered, as well as join our Everydayer Club for more on the Discord chat that we have rolling on, and as like we mentioned, doing an ad-free version of this podcast. Thank you again for making Locked On Utes first listen and view of the day. We'll be back with you tomorrow talking about the latest rumblings for the Utah Utes in the transfer portal and more on Morgan Scalley and Utah coach hires. It may be the offseason, but there's a ton going on, so keep tuning in to Locked On Utes each and every day. Like and subscribe for more Utah content.